Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum podcast. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week, I dive back into Final Fantasy with a game I did quite a while ago on my channel, and one that I could pretty much just recite and talk about by memory at this point. Final Fantasy IX. And obviously I'm going to do spoilers right off the bat, because this is going to take a while to talk about. Final Fantasy VII, those ones took about an hour, a couple of hours to do. I imagine this is going to be in the same vein as those, because there is so much to talk about. Good and bad. And I liken it to a situation where this game, as good as it is not without faults, and discussing those faults is important, because my interpretation of what I would consider a fault has changed from when I used to play it. And again, this was a game that I played when it came out, because this was one of the few franchises that I just knew I would like. Because at the time, my brother and I played Final Fantasy VII, played Final Fantasy VIII for most of it. I ended up beating it on my own. But then Final Fantasy IX was the one where I kind of went off on my own. Still wasn't the I only play JRPGs guy, but it was slowly kind of getting to that point. So if you listened to the how I got into JRPGs and anime, this was a couple years before then. So I was already kind of invested in Final Fantasy and little else. And it was getting to that point, so I already kind of had a gauge of Final Fantasy, at least that era. But I will admit that at the time I felt 8 and 9 just didn't work for me, as opposed to 7, and part of it probably has to do with pacing. But unlike 7 and unlike 8, 9 has been the one that has gotten better as I look back and play it more and experience it more and really understand what it was going for and trying to achieve on so many different fronts. There are some things about it that do not hold up, and whether it's due to the modern lens of how culture is now versus interpretation, whether it's just due to the way the late PS1 games are, especially something I want to talk about in regards to Legend of Legaia, or not Legend of Legaia, but Legend of Dragoon, that I'm currently playing. I'm getting a lot of similarities to that because they came out pretty much at the same time. Like the tail end of 1999, early 2000. Same thing with Chrono Cross. They all share similarities, and you can probably already guess what I'm going to talk about there. But unlike those, and unlike a lot of games that I go in, this is going to be one of those chronological things, because I can bounce around into different things, but I want to talk about plot and I want to talk about characters, because I have become more focused on characters and more focused on their relation to how they react to plot. Not so much the plots itself, but the mechanisms of the characters, like for the last while, than I have ever in my life. Because if it's not for a character going through a thing, I'm just seeing the same stories over and over. There's only so many stories you can tell, but you have to have a mechanism of what character, in what interpretation you're trying to give the story to. That's how you build intrigue for me. And there's a lot of the things in Final Fantasy IX that does build intrigue. There's some that doesn't. But the nice thing about having played the game so many times is I can kind of go in order. There is a lot to go into. But as a primer, would I recommend Final Fantasy IX? Absolutely. Is it one of the ones I would recommend right away? Not really. No, Final Fantasy IX is one of the ones where you kind of have to get a gauge for not only what it was dealing with at the time, but having a fascination for those like early to mid Final Fantasy games, the 4 through 6, and those early 1 through 3s, so you can understand the references, you can understand this being a love letter to all the games that came before it, because after this point, Final Fantasy changes. Final Fantasy absolutely changes. For the better, for the worse, who knows. But once 10 hits and they go off on their merry way, the way they make the games, the speed at which they make games, how they are explored, how they are managed, they change. And this is kind of that final thing that I would say Sakaguchi was like a main contributor for. I don't know if he wrote it, but he was definitely like, this was his last like big Final Fantasy game where he was just in direct control of, other than maybe 10. But even at that point, he was kind of like focusing on Spirits Within and shit like that. So it's like, this is the culmination of all his work before he left. So anyone who was in this project knew specifically this was a love letter to all of the early Final Fantasy games. We're taking it back to specifically 1 through 5 and the style of those games, and it evokes a lot of Final Fantasy 4. And if you liked Final Fantasy 4 and the way it kind of showed off things, Final Fantasy 9 is an extension of that, specifically the battle system, for good and bad, what that implies. But we'll start with Zidane Tribal, or Zidane. I call him Zidane because of the soccer player. I believe that's how it's pronounced. But let's just say Zidane is an interesting guy because he's coming off the heels of 2 other interesting people. And I forget if he's a direct result of those, but it would not shock me. So Zidane is part of Tantalus, this group of thieves / actors from Lindblom who come in, they try to take away, and they're expressly designed to kidnap the princess Garnet to Alexandros, this conveniently human girl born to this very, very, very different pig elephant looking lady, Queen Brawny, or Brawn. And I'm going to say Queen Brawn just for ease of use. And if I switch, I switch. But something's off just by looking at it. You see the sequence, and I'm still like in awe every time. Not just the early visuals of Final Fantasy IX, but you get Garnet, the typical dark-haired, beautiful, teenage girl. Because at the time, it was like Tifa, Renoa, Garnet, like it was all black-haired girls. Black, dark brown-haired girls. It was a type in Final Fantasy games back then. I'm kind of glad that Yuna had lighter hair because I was like, okay, I get it. We don't need this, And I was kind of missing the different colored looks that like Terra and Celeste and other people were getting at the time, because it was like every dark-haired girl is the main love interest. Hooray! But Garnet's whole thing is she wants to escape the castle too. They didn't realize that, so as they're breaking in, as part of the play, you're seeing this spectacle unfold because they are legitimate actors. They're posing as actors doing a play, all the while you get one of the other characters, and probably the most memorable character in this game, Vivi, who has his own story. Let's just say he's trying to get into, this nice kid, looks like a black mage, because he is a black mage, doesn't know who he is, but he's like, 5, 6-ish in like mental age, so he's in awe of everything. He's just trying to figure his way through Alexandria. He's got this thing, he can't get it through. Then this kid Puck, Midsummer Night's Dream, interesting. So this rat kid who ends up being a prince, minor character, whatever, basically says, come with me, do the thing, whatever. So they get in, all the shit hits the fan, all that goes on. So you notice that a lot of anthropomorphic characters are in. This is one of the designs that Final Fantasy IX goes for that differentiates it from almost everything else in the franchise. Anthropomorphic characters are everywhere. Whether Zidane has a tail, a lot of members of the cast aren't just humanoids. Well, I mean, human to an extent, but Freya is a member of the, I would say rat people, or I guess that's what they call them, mouse people, rat face, but, or, this guy's human, but this person is a frog person, or this person's a hippo person, or this person's a, shit like that. So everybody kind of has a distinct look that is so different from, oh, they're all humans. So you get used to, oh, they're all humans forever. And then they go for this anthropomorphic look. And the game does a good job of kind of describing people. Like, oh, this is a dwarf, and this is a dwarven village, and this guy's a blah, this guy's a, the frog person, the Queen of Quen, or the whatever, or this person's a Moogle, because Moogles talk in this, because they've slowly developed more of the, talking rather than just being Moogles. And just instead of just saying Koopo, now they actually do stuff. So it was a nice feature to have different races and different cultures and different things interacting as if it was all a melting pot of people. So they escape. Braun tries to stop the ship, and it goes in a forest and whatever. Tantalus is like, no, we can't really kidnap her and go to Lindblom, so we got to get the fuck out of here. Zidane is like, no, I want to save Garnet because she's fucking hot. It's literally his whole motivation, and this is might as well break here to talk about what I think is one of the worst things about Zidane, which I used to think was funny, and now the more I look at it, is kind of chintzy. So Zidane has a flirtatious side, and it's obnoxious. And not even in the Edgar, like, I flirt with people kind of way, because they both interact the same way. So Edgar from 6 was bad at flirting with people, and the game makes a point of it. But my god, Zidane takes it to another level, because he's what, 17, 18, even 16 or whatever. He sounds like he's a fucking, like, precocious kid who's bad at it, but is trying so hard. He does feel like a direct response to Cloud was kind of dopey, but he was very stern and dealing with a lot of deep shit. Squall is very introspective and very self-serious and just, I'm above this shit. I don't want to deal with it. I'm just annoyed. Get the fuck away from me. Whatever. That type. Zidane feels like they're trying to be Aladdin, but they do a very bad job of it. Because I think Zidane did not need the flirtatious side, because he's so bad at it, and he's very direct about it, and it is overdone in that early part of the game. Like, he even has an ability called Protect Girls. I'm like, one of the things that bothers me was like Zidane and Vivi are sitting there talking, and Vivi's being very serious, and he's looking at a chocobo and whatever, and Zidane goes over and he goes, oh, did you find a girl? No. It's like, no, but I know every girl in Lindblom. You want help with finding girls? No. But, okay, whatever. So he keeps harping on that. And then he keeps asking, he's like, oh, there's a girl, and there's whatever. Then there's a part where they're escaping South Gate, and they're like, oh, okay, you guys can go first. Come on, go up. And he jumps up and feels Garnet's butt, right? And then he's trying to apologize, and she's just like, and it's like, of course it was intentional. And it struck me until I saw somebody else watching a stream of it, and she went, no. Because I had already started feeling that Zidane grabbing Garnet's butt was kind of a bleh move, especially since they didn't really know each other that well. And then you have, he invites some waitress out on a date, and then tries to invite Garnet out on a date and whatever, and then fucks up and finds out, oh, he's in. Then he invites another, like a minor character, Aaron, out on a date, and it's over fucking done, man. Because we get to know him as this guy when you peel back all the layers of the I'm flirty. You get this, like, I just want to help people. You don't need a reason to help people. And he just goes out of his way. He'll jump off a cliff to save somebody. He'll try to save his friend from being turned to stone. He'll just jump in, and he's got this, like, crazy acrobatic style when he's running away from shit. He has enough charisma, right, as a character. Like, he would own a scene without the flirtatious side, but because, like, he is so bad at it, and they harp on it so much, it's just distracting as all hell. And that early part of the game where Zidane is just like every fifth word, every fifth line or something is just, hey, do you want to win? I like girls. Like, I get it. You like girls. You're not Squall. I get it. You're not afraid of that. Like, if they had mentioned it once or twice, it would have been charming. The more he's there, the more annoying it is, especially when you're, like, I get it. You're trying to balance out very serious characters in Garnet, Steiner, and Vivi as the main cast, but it's like, you went overboard. You can be very jovial and interesting and still have that determined, again, the Aladdin example. Every time I watch Aladdin, I'm like, he has that side to him, but he's never, he's always serious. But if he needs to have that crack a joke and look at the camera and do the sly, crazy shit, he will. Disney didn't overdo it. Like, he likes Jasmine, and he's overwhelmed with Jasmine's beauty, and it's like, okay, I get that. They don't harp on it, other than when it needs to be a plot-relevant thing. When he needs to be serious, it doesn't seem out of character for him to go out of it. Zidane just spends every third line just, I'm on a date. I want to go on a date. Yeah. So I got over that. More about Zidane later when it comes to in-game skills, but I'll worry about that later. So they get to Lindblom. They do this cool stuff, and a lot of Final Fantasy IX is set pieces, because I find that that's something that later Final Fantasy games do. They don't really do dungeons anymore in the typical go to a place, do a dungeon. A lot of areas are set pieces and set dressing as dungeons. So instead of going up a mountain, you're going up Mount Gagazet to get to Zanarkand. Final Fantasy IX is, okay, I'm in this village that acts as a front for something in the castle and the shit, because you slowly kind of peel back the layers that Queen Braun is doing something evil, and that's why she kidnapped people, and everything is interconnected. But then there's another place later that's like, okay, this is a typical dungeon-y thing. Like, the Ice Cavern is a typical dungeon-y thing, right? But it's almost like, that's rare. Everything else is like interconnected into, okay, I'm going down in this whatever to make it to the city that's above ground, Clayra, or the dungeon-y thing is the interconnected thing to get me to a boss, to get me to the, they do a good job mid-Final Fantasy, mid-era Final Fantasy, where it's like, they don't feel like going into a fucking cave unless they have to do it. So I've always appreciated that. So they keep going, they get to Lindblom. And you start seeing that Zidane and Garnet already starting to kind of get chemistry as characters, because Zidane is this very open and honest, and he's, infatuated, let's just be honest. But he's also seeing the advantages of Garnet is this prim and proper princess, whatever. We don't want you traveling and having that weigh us down, because it's not bad enough that Garnet is prim and proper and 16 and doesn't know the way of the world and is very naive, and it turns into her character. You got this lumbering knight Steiner who, he's annoying, but in a good way. The more you get to know him, the more you get to like him. But early on, he's, Princess, stop dealing with this scoundrel. He also gets annoying too. But he's also balanced out by the fact that Vivi is along for the ride, and Zidane is like his helper, and Steiner is also like, dude, Vivi's awesome. Stop being rude. And Steiner and Vivi start getting a coordination, and they start becoming like, surrogate older brother to a younger brother kind of thing. And same thing with Zidane. Like, everybody wants to protect Vivi. They always do that. Vivi's like precious. They always know shit going with him, right? So they're dealing with the village of Dolly, and Vivi gets kidnapped. He doesn't know why, but he finds out that there are black mages. While they're trying to escape, they find out that the black mages can move and whatever, and Vivi's like, what the fuck? because Vivi is basically the existential crisis of the entire game that the thing revolves around. And he's trying to figure out, well, am I human? Am I whatever? Am I different? Can I whatever? And these people move, but they ignore me. And I'm like, I just want a friend. So you slowly get to see Zidane and Garnet and Steiner revolve around him as friends because he's their support. So they do that. And Vivi is being protected, which is good because he's got all this power. But they work around it and they deal with it. So they work their way ever closer. As Lindblom comes into view, you start understanding that Garnet was being subjected to, this plot by Cid to get her to Lindblom. So Cid in this game is the regent, the ruler of Lindblom Castle, which is the biggest castle, the biggest castle in the region, the Mist Continent. And they wanted Garnet, so they used the subterfuge to do that, and it's all great. Lindblom has a set piece of their own called the Festival of the Hunt, which is an interesting, 10 or 12 minute, scurry around, fight things with this awesome theme. I'll get into the music later. It is very good. But the Festival of the Hunt happens. You meet Freya, who is the Dragoon. And Freya is an interesting character because she gets a lot of story in the first half of the game. And then a whole hell of a lot of nothing after that. You get her until disc 2, middle disc 2. When the scene shifts away from her, you don't even care. And I understand that from some sort of perspective, but it's not even fair. They give her so much stuff to do because they do her storyline is her Burmecia or Burmecia. I'm going to say Burmecia for now. Burmecia just gets ransacked by Alexandria. They gotta help. And this is where Zidane is great. He just jumps in the fray and says, I can help. So he does. That's the part of Zidane that I like. You don't need a reason to help somebody. I'm gonna keep harping on that because that's part of his charm. Freya is very self-serious and just I ran away from Burmecia, but I want to protect it. So she wants to protect Burmecia. Clara, you slowly find out that Bronn was trying to get Garnet's Eidolons, which were the Espers, or summon creatures in this game. They're slowly kind of getting that towards 10, where they become literal god figures. Because that's, we're not at that point yet, but the Eidolons are just oh my god, we're super powerful. They're hidden inside Garnet and any summoned person. Because they're an offshoot tribe of people who can summon them. Bronn wants the power, but she learns that it's from a person named Kuja that she gets that information from. And we get Kuja's introduction to the end of Disc 1. And Kuja is an interesting case. You get this weird, Sephiroth meets Seymour meets opera singer actor guy, and it's very flowery and really off-putting, and the fact that he is wears what he wears and has a cod piece and is all beautiful, and it's just awkward and when I first met him and the first playthrough or something, I did not care. He's just weird for the sake of weird, and not even in the ineffectual Seymour kind of way, just in the you are such a waste of it. But it's the more you dig into Kuja, the more you actually end up oh shit, this guy's actually good at his job. And I will get into that later. Kuja is the prime example of a great Final Fantasy protagonist done right, under the guise of somebody you don't expect to be doing it right. Because everybody loves Kefka, everybody loves Sephiroth, and then Kuja's sitting there going, hold my fucking beer, you idiots. And I'll get to that in a minute. So, I like Arden the most because he owns scenery and has a big, bulkier feel to him. But, even with his effeminate charm and charisma and just weird outfit, Kuja is just nope, he's good. And that's the thing that I like about Final Fantasy IX. You see it and you look at it and you're I'm not getting it. I don't get the story. I don't get the characters yet. And then it's about details. It's about things that say and do that happen. And then you start peeling back what Final Fantasy IX really is. And it's a very dark and existential game about loss and grief and a lot of pain. And you don't realize that because it looks very looks upbeat and happy. And, you know, everybody's like different and the cultures are different. Zidane is very, you know, uppity, happy, you know, and Kuja is very flowery looking. You just, nope. It took me like a 2 or 3 playthroughs to be like, oh, this game's mean-spirited. Not in the Berseria where everybody's kind of an asshole kind of way, but in the, these people are going through some very dark shit. So, Disc 2 is happening, and Burmecia has already been ransacked and destroyed, and everybody's been left to Clara. That's not enough. Garnet gets kidnapped as they're looking for Disc 2, because at this point, Garnet is getting sick of Zidane trying to tell her what to do and what not to do, because Zidane and Steiner are just like, you're not good enough at your job, you don't understand the realities of the situation. We can understand that Braun may or may not be doing something. Steiner doesn't want to believe it. Steiner is like Waka. He doesn't want to believe that his queen could be doing something. So his existential crisis is my loyalty to my charge of my princess or to my country. And he's facing it because he's, you know, dealing with a lot of stealing and shit. So they go to Trano and they have to find this thing called Supersoft to help Blank. And then they go and they get kidnapped again. Garnet finds out finally that she's just been a pawn in the whole thing. So her Eidolons get stolen. Odin destroys Clara in short fucking fashion. He just throws a sword and boom, everything's set on fire and exploded. So, that's 2 nations already destroyed in a big fucking hurry. So you get Braun doing all the fucking damage. But you keep remembering that Kuja's the one kind of pulling the strings. So, you're seeing Braun as this figure being manipulated, but she's not nice either. So you got Garnet basically saying, my mother is a bitch. How do I reconcile this? Freya's dealing with the loss of her culture. Like, her entire race almost got wiped off the map by things. And then Braun's right-hand woman, Beatrix, is also dealing with her own shit. I haven't even gotten to Beatrix yet. That's how much shit is packed into this game. It's so good. Beatrix is basically supposed to lose fight over and over and over and over. But at that point in the game, you find out you're trying to get Garnet back, and everybody's faced with the idea that, oh, Braun and Kuja kidnapped Garnet and tried to take the Eidolons from her. And Beatrix was like, no, I am sick of dealing with this disrespect. I could have done everything without blowing up the entire fucking country. And I think she could have. If you've seen Beatrix fight, yeah, probably could have. Because she's basically Steiner, but better at everything. And the fact that she's not playable sucks. Because Beatrix is great. When she turns to, the light side again, and understands that her power is strong enough to withstand. She understands that Braun is being a bitch long before Steiner does, and tells him, just, dude, accept it. And they fight it off, and Freya fights them off, and Steiner joins them, so they all kind of do that. The next phase is Zidane and Vivi and Garnet go to the Outer Continent, and they do this, weird stuff, and they deal with Quina. I haven't even got to Quina yet. Let's stop there. Early in the game, Disc 1, you can go to something known as a Q's Mars, or Q. I'm going to say Q. And you go to the Q's Mars, you find a frog, and the thing is talks like this. This thing looks like a fucking just, I don't even know how you would describe it. Like a chef with a weird clown face with an tongue. And yes, every time Quina talked, I did it. Is that flag? Because I did for fun, but I won't for now. But Quina is a waste of a character. But fills out the blue mage thing. We'll get to that. But Queen's whole thing, they eat a lot. Or he, I'll just say they, because it is an undefined gender or pronoun at the time. So Queena wants frogs, wants food. That's it. They're there for comic relief. Okay, cool. Bring them along. We'll get to Queena's battle mechanics in a minute. So they join. And they join a second time. They get to the outer continent. You find Eiko. I hate Eiko so fucking much. Mostly because of first impressions. Because, again, much like Zidane, there's more stuff to her that meets the eye. And I know the mechanism of I'm alone in the world and I don't have any more. She's basically alone with the Mughals for her entire life, which is like she's 6 years old. I get it. Her grandpa died, left her alone with the Mughals in this town far away from anybody else, no civilization other than the dwarves, but that's even further away because they're separated by a tree known as the Yifa tree. And she's like enthralled with Zidane, but it gets irritating because the way they phrase it is like she's in love with him, as opposed to, oh my god, I want to learn everything. It's great, because you can do that sort of character, but her whole thing is Zidane is the man for me, and Garnet is a dum-dum, and they're stupid, and and I was like, what kind of girls do you like? I'm like, you're 6. I'm like, I get that kids are interesting people that have their own fascinations and their own feelings and their own warped sense of things. And even worse, if you're a character that has been by yourself and has never met with another humanoid for 10 years or whatever. But they overdo it. And it takes a while for Eiko to stop being this, I'm in love with Zidane, it's so lovely, I'm gonna make him I'm gonna make this food for him, it's gonna be great. And it's just like, if she was the same age, okay, I'd get it, that'd be fine, or I want to impress him and show him how great I am. Like, you can phrase it in a different way, just like Zidane's flirtatious side, you can frame it in a different fucking way. So it drives me nuts. And then Eiko, slowly reveals that she's actually from Garnet's original tribe. And she can explain a lot of stuff to Garnet that nobody else could. They're from the same race at Madain Sari. And this is where the summon thing, the summon beings can be summoned from and, imbued into your soul and shit like that. So they're part of you. And she helps figure out the Yifa tree situation, destroying mist in there. Kuja reveals that he's been fucking around with things for so long, and Braun is kind of a pawn in the game. So Garnet tries to save it. Along that time, you get another useless character, an Amarant, or Amarant. It's just another guy whose whole thing is, I'm there to fill a thing in the game. I'm a battle system guy. I don't have a character. His whole character is Zidane framed me for something that I didn't do that you don't even have to do, right? You don't even have to go into that storyline, but that's Amarant's whole story is that. If you don't even mention it, he doesn't even mention it. He gets a thing to talk to Freya a bit here and there. That's about it. That's all he does. He just kind of does his own thing. I'm a cool motherfucker and you can't stop me. Like, I get it. But even by I'm a cool guy and that's all I am kind of standards, he doesn't exist. He's just there to be the monk. So he exists to be the monk, just like Queena. This game has a lot of useless characters. The important ones are Zidane, Garnet, Steiner, Vivi, Eiko. Everybody else, like, once Freya's storyline is done, fuck him. Queena and Amarant don't even get that. So what are they even fucking doing here? Other than being, like, lineup fodder. But getting back to Braun, you're, dealing with that shit. You find out that Kuja's been manipulating her the whole time, but she wants to kill him. But then you find out that Kuja's actually way more powerful than she is and mocks the fuck out of her. kills her, and then tries to use the power that he gained over there, which was brainwashing Bahamut of all things, and then blowing the shit out of Alexandria. So Garnet lost her mom, had to deal with people telling her she's stupid at her job because she's naive and young and can't understand what she's doing. She lost her mother, learned that the people that she did have as her mother, her biological mother, died trying to get her to Alexandria. And then you have Kuja blowing shit up. Well, more so, let me scratch that. You more so had Kuja trying to steal an Eidolon stronger than Bahamut because he wanted to kill somebody else, but the person found out and then tried to kill Kuja instead. But in doing so, he set off what was essentially a bomb, blowing the shit up out of Alexandria. And now, Garnet has lost Alexandria. Burmecia, Claire is gone. Lindblom had been taken out by Braun earlier in the thing. So, and the entire Mist Continent is just fucking torn to fucking shreds. Unbeknownst to that, Kuja is now, like, public enemy number one because he knows what happened to the fucking place, but whatever. Lindblom's still in shreds. You try to deal with this weird storyline of getting Sid back to human form because they try to turn him into something known as an Uglop. It's basically this ugly bug-looking thing that they try to make this like mascot character of Final Fantasy IX. Doesn't exactly work. And the less said about trying to turn him back into a human, the better, because he turns into a frog because Quina likes eating frogs, and that was the gag, whatever. So, we find out that Kuja has been manipulating Vivi's race of people. So, earlier in Disc 2, and I know I'm bouncing around from story bit to story bit, but Vivi finds out that an entire set of black mages have been trying to just kind of make a go of it in the Outer Continent. You visit them early, but then you visit them again a couple other times throughout the game, and Vivi kind of acts as the I'm going to help you guys by going out and seeing the world if you guys don't want to, but telling you about things. But this is where the existential crises come in. One of them, who is kind of the de facto leader, Mr. 288, has been kind of sitting and staring at a cemetery, and they talk about black mages stopping and the mechanisms of dying and grieving and loss. And they try to kind of go over that. And Vivi's too young for this shit. Literally, his mental age is not equipped to be dealing with the prospect of dying. And honestly, I can kind of agree with that. Even at nearing 40, I really don't like that shit. So imagine what a 6-year-old, because Vivi's what, 1 year old, give or take, but he's a kid. He's like 6 to 8 years old. Whatever. It's fine. But it's not fine. But Kuja is manipulating that. He tells the black mages that he can extend their lifespan if they work for him. So Vivi chases after them. They're going after Kuja anyway because of a lot of their shit. Due to the attack on Alexandria, this is another part of the game which kind of sucks. Because if you use Garnet, like, you can use anyone in the party, provided Zidane doesn't leave the party. Other than the reasons like the character shifts and you're using Steiner or you're using Garnet as the main character at the time, Zidane never leaves, but you're open to kind of taking everybody else. But if you're using Garnet or Dagger, you find this like situation where for a good chunk of Disc 3, it's Dagger can't concentrate and she'll miss turns, or she won't be able to cast a spell. And the failure rate is about 50% or even 60%. And it basically renders her just an invalid for the entire time. They tried to use a plot reason because she's dealing with grief over the loss of so many things and giving it a tangible effect in game. But I think they overused the execution of that and made her basically useless for that part of the game. It would have been better if she was just not a party member, right? You probably could have just left her not there. She can't really even talk. Mostly she can do inner monologues, or she can have Eiko kind of speak for her when Eiko's even there. But then you find out that Kuja's trying to, do something in this place called Oilver. I believe it's called Oilver or Olver. Some French pronunciation. Basically, you learn about this other world known as Terra. So Gaia is the world of Earth, essentially, and Terra is this red orb in the sky. But we'll get to that one when we get to Garland. But for whatever thing, they keep talking about this, and they get this MacGuffin from this city. Then you go to the desert palace, and then you do the mechanics in there. Kuja takes Eiko, trying to get the Eidolons from her, but it doesn't really work so well. Eiko's friend Mog turns out to be an Eidolon protector known as Medine, who kicks the fucking shit out of everything, which is great. But then you slowly kind of peel everything back, and Beatrix tells you that Garnet is in Alexandria, but is in a place that nobody can get to. So she tells you it's in Braun's resting place. Zidane goes there. One of the best scenes of the game is Zidane kind of going away from the whole, flirtatiously dumb bit to the I've been liking Garnet, and they slowly kind of get chemistry, and it kind of works out, and it's great. Garnet resolves herself, changes her hairstyle in a very drastic way. Just cuts off her hair with a dagger, right? And she's good as new and can do everything again and use her in battle as you see fit again, which is great, because as soon as that happens, you're just like, yay! Disc 3 is not shit anymore. Because admittedly, that like post-Alexandria period doing the desert palace and the shit is kind of a drag. Because if you like using Garnet like I do, it just feels like so you're kind of waiting for a set piece. And what's worse is you're waiting for an airship. You get the airship, you can go around and do things. You start learning that Kuja's entire motivation is to get back to Terra because he's from there. His entire reason for being has been a plot by this person named Garland. Not that one from Final Fantasy 1, just a reference to that using the same name. This caretaker of Terra, basically. And he has created Kuja to be a merchant of death. Very, very good at it. So they end up making it to Terra through shenanigans. And the story takes an awkward, let's just say awkward turn. So this is the reason that I put spoiler warnings in this. Holy fuck. Let's just say a lot of weird mumbo jumbo happens, and I'm trying to make sense of it all. Because from the mechanisms, from the time you get to disc 3 to this point, to the end of the game, a lot of weird shit happens. So I don't like this part of the game at all. I don't understand it. I've never understood it. I've read guides that try to explain it. Like, there's a fucking guide in the Final Fantasy IX game facts of all things. It's been around for like 20 years, trying to explain Garland, Terra, Kuja, Zidane, and the final boss, and their relation, as if everything made sense. I just think it's rushed as fuck. So I still think Final Fantasy VIII's Disc 3 is worse, but man, Disc 3 and Final Fantasy VIII is trouble. Because Final Fantasy VII's Disc 2 isn't that great either. You're trying to explain Cloud's weird and like psychological bullshit. I've had issues with that. Final Fantasy VIII is worse because of Squall's thing with Renoa, but I can sort of understand time compression. I do not fucking understand Final Fantasy IX at all. But I'll give it a shot, and I'll try to do it better than the monologue that Garland gives you. So, you go to Terra. You find out that Zidane has been looking for his home the entire time. He finds out he's what's known as a genome. This person who is supposed to house the souls of Terra. So basically, the people of Terra find out that their civilization is dying. So how do they get around it? Well, they have to take over another planet. Okay, I guess you can take over a planet. Do you just kill them all? Not really. But yes. But no. And this is where the confusing bit comes in. Garland's plan, apparently, is to have Kuja and other people be a little more special. So instead of just having souls and, like, no souls and just being like, I'm just nothing, I have no soul, I just exist. You know, shit like that. Those are the normal genomes. Everybody looks like Zidane. You find out Kuja also has a tail, but doesn't show it until he goes pissy. But we'll get to that. So, Garland's whole explanation is he has imbued the Aoife tree as a conduit onto Gaia as a filtering system for people who have died and trapping their souls or destroying their souls or filtering souls of people on from Terra down to Gaia so that eventually Gaia will just have no actual people. So rather than just kill everything, the souls of Terra are in like suspended animation or cryogenic or what. They don't really explain the reason. They just say long sleep. But they essentially say they need the genomes as physical bodies and vessels for the souls of Terra, but we need to get rid of the people that exist on Gaia first. Because of probably overcrowding or some shit like that. Overpopulation, yeah, that's reasonable. But you have to breed the consciousness of war and kill all the people on Terra or kill all the people on Gaia, and you use Kuja to do that. And Zidane could have done that as well. Or even the third one that they barely reference but exists as Mikoto, she could have done the same. Because it's like they use Zidane as a deterrent just in case Kuj is a little too good at his job, which he kind of is. You know, as we saw, he helped kill people in Burmecia. He helped kill people in Clara. He killed Queen Braun. He's manipulated black mages. He's destroyed Alexandria or helped destroy it and destroy Lindblom. He's been part and parcel for everything that has happened. And even if Garland himself destroyed Alexandria, Kuja would have done the job anyway. So, yeah. Kuja has this weird, like, come to Jesus moment where he's like, I need power to get rid of Garland because I just don't want to be under his thumb anymore. So you have this issue. How do you get rid of this super powerful being that is almost immortal? Well, you create Zidane in his place. But Zidane doesn't really believe that shit, and it's hard to... Because all of this happens in the scope of a 5-minute monologue, right? They don't build to it. I mean, they built a Kuja and Zidane a little bit, but they don't really. They just have Kuja exist as this, oh, he's interesting. I guess I kill you. Like, they allude to Garland and Kuja's relationship. They don't explain it. And then they expect you to dump all this stuff about Terra and the souls of Terra need to inhabit the genomes, but we also need to kill people on Gaia to take over rather than just ram the planet. And, you know, you could have just said ram the planet and fuse together like some meteor type shit. You know, I could have understood that. But no, they went through this weird mechanism of the Aoife tree diverges souls and the whatever and kills people, you know, or houses dead people as a filter system for Terra, and then eventually Terra will become, you know, Gaia will become Terra, and, you know, Zidane is the vessel and the messengers of death, and it, like, my brain. And then there's this whole thing about the Aoife tree, and you don't even know, like, what it's there for other than being the filtration system of death. You know, like, I get some of it, but they don't explain it well. So Terra exists and Zidane wants to get rid of Garland, so he does. Kuja descends because apparently he can just float everywhere. And then he takes Garland's power, kicks him off a ledge, and says, okay, well, I did my job, I think I'm good. And then he fights Zidane, and he's like, this is fine, whatever, I fight him, it's fine. But as he kicks Garland off a ledge, Garland, being another superpowered being, despite being dead, he can inhabit their minds, I guess. And he goes, "You're not immortal. You have a lifespan, and Zidane is meant to kill you." So that takes Kuja off the deep end. He goes into this trance of just like, okay, if I'm going to die, I'm going to take everybody else with me. Though I think his exact quote was, "This world won't exist without me." And Kuja destroys all of Terra. And then he's basically just saying his whole game at the end of it, at first, was to just destroy things. And he was good at it. He's destroyed countless nations over and over and over and over and over, does it. But now he just wants to unmake existence. Kind of fucked up. And the thing is he kind of succeeds at it. He has the Ultima spell, which, Ultima is the ultimate spell. It is his go-to, his ace in the hole. As if him being a guy who could basically use Flare Star and Holy and Flare and shit wasn't powerful enough. No. It's just, nope. We just got this shit and we go. So he blows up the crystal that makes the world. You get this explanation in a really awesome final dungeon where Garland kind of explains the mechanism a little bit better of his motivations and his plot a little better. Had you put this stuff in the game or put Garland in the game as some hidden character in disc 2 or something and kind of alluded to some of this stuff rather than dump it at the end of disc 3, or early disc 4, it would have made so much more sense. Because then I kind of wrapped my head around anything of this being alluded to early rather than I'm just blowing shit up. Oh, now we've got existential crises. So the party has to do this thing. They got to beat Kuja. That's fair. You have a physical, emotional urge to defeat Kuja. You're setting up this climactic final battle against Kuja, who has been turned into trance. He's basically unkillable, but you gotta do it anyway. You find a way to kill him and the game ends and it's all hunky-dory and no. And here's yet another reason the game kind of falters. So the final boss isn't Kuja, despite all evidence basically pointing in that direction all game since the end of Disc 1. This emotional character that you have a reason to kill, this thing that existed in the Eva tree as the back of the tree, known as Necron, has said, "I have just proven that your existence is flawed because Kuja has unmade the world, so you deserve to all fucking die and not exist." Where did you come from? Why are you here? Did anything allude to you at all? Why do you look like a fucking pustule with weird glowy bits and circular rings and shit? Don't ask me. Necron is something that could have been alluded to and wasn't. And I guess they just needed a different final boss rather than just giving Kuja another final form, which could have made more sense, because it wasn't enough that he had the Death Guy's form and the Trans Kuja form. We couldn't have just had him become this big giant fucking monstrosity. No. We had to come up with Necron instead. And Necron is a hard boss fight, but does he make sense? I don't know. I don't know if he makes sense. Nobody's ever thought he made sense. And again, the fact I had to read a guide, somebody trying to make sense of it from context clues that really the game doesn't really explain very well. Everything from mid-disc 3 on is just a blur. Because they try so hard to make everything make sense. But they rush it so much. And that is one of my big problems. Is you have this character that has done so much fucking damage. He is the guy you're meant to kill, or meant to at least stop to the point that he can't kill anybody anymore. And you can't even make him the final boss for that catharsis. You give us this nothing thing that just exists to exist. Like, even X-Death turning into Neo-X-Death sort of makes sense because it's still X-Death, even if it's weird, because he is succumbing to the Void's power and shit. Cloud of Darkness I get because it was an early game, like it was an end game thing, but it was still early enough that you don't have like a mental and emotional stake in seeing somebody get killed. There's a reason that X-Death or Sephiroth or Kefka stand the test, because they end up being the final bosses. You have a reason to want them to be dead, but they end up being the final bosses. The game has been leading you to all this time wanting to get to that, and they stick the landing. Arden, despite all the weirdness of him, he sticks the landing. He's, even Ultimecia, at least you get a disc and a half to want to get rid of her. I don't really see the reason for it, but the game has like been leading on that Edea was Ultimecia all along, right? So there's something there that says, okay, this is the final climactic boss. We're getting to that. Even if it's 50 million final forms, it's still the same final boss. Necron exists as this out of nowhere asshole that I don't think a lot of people really enjoy, because there's no catharsis in it. There's no like emotional reason to get rid of this thing or reason why he would exist. And there's no real reason why any of the Aoife tree and the Terra and Gaia nonsense exists. Like, we could do all this without any of this crap, and you could have just made it work. You'd have just said, okay, you went to this place to exist. Okay, you could have said, like, Kuja is my brother, and I have to kill him because whatever. Garland doesn't even have to exist. You wipe Garland from the entire plot. You wipe Terra from the entire plot. You just say, okay, we're from a race of beings that have a shortened lifespan, and I'm really pissed off, right? Kuja is just maniacal about trying to find ways to stay immortal, and he's found a way via trans, and is just, he, still thinks that he's going to die. Like, in his despair, he thinks he's going to die, so like, he destroys the crystal so he can, you can do everything that Kuja is going to do without any of the Terra nonsense, without any of the Gaia nonsense, without any of the Aoife nonsense. You use it as a thing to explain why Kuja does what he does, but again, much like Cloud and PTSD, which would have been an easier explanation for his weird bullshit in 7, you don't explain half of the shit you try to explain in a rush in 9, and you still end up getting the Kuja's the main bad guy because he's been blowing shit up. Because he is angsty fuck who is doing all this damage. Okay, fine, whatever, it's fine. Plot of Final Fantasy IX is fucking bonkers. So, with that out of the way, let's go to... Yeah, I mentioned that to get that out of the way. All of that out of the way. Because it's good and bad. But, okay, so let's change it. Let's take a deep breath and talk about other things in Final Fantasy IX. The battle system. A lot like Final Fantasy IV. The Final Fantasy IV had classes. So Cecil was a paladin. He covers people. Kain is a dragoon. This person's a white mage, a black mage, whatever. Final Fantasy IX takes that same approach. So Zidane is a thief. He can steal things. But it's bad. One of the other issues that I have with Final Fantasy IX is the stealing mechanic sucks. For many reasons. Let's just say a 0.001 some percentage to get a rare item from bosses. Okay. Couldn't steal anything. I watched a dude. I've actually watched 2 people, and one time I did a playthrough myself. I was in a boss fight in Disc 2, this thing known as Hilgagars or Hilgigas, right? Or Hilgigas. You're supposed to steal a flute from this guy. 30 fucking minutes to steal a flute. And it would be one thing if Zidane was a thief and had no like physical attack power. Guess who has the highest attack power in the game? Zidane. Guess who has the highest attack power in Trance? Steiner does. Imagine you have Steiner and Zidane in the party, right? You have to do damage. You have both of them holding up as tanks and people doing damage. But you're also trying to steal stuff in a system that doesn't allow you to steal anything because couldn't steal anything. Okay, you spend a couple of turns trying to get a and they're really good items. They're, a couple of areas ahead of the equipment you're supposed to get. I get it. Hiding really rare items behind good shit makes sense. But, man, you're trying to fight a boss that is kicking the shit out of you. You're taking one of your strongest characters, if not the strongest, depending on whether you're just having him do damage or not. You're telling a damage dealer not to do damage because he wants to waste his turns stealing stuff in a game that precludes the ability to actually steal with effectiveness. Okay. Whatever. And then Zidane has a skill known as Thievery, which is supposed to be you get an X percentage of damage every time you steal a thing. I did a playthrough. Not the one for YouTube, but a playthrough like a couple of years ago where I went through the rigmarole of trying to steal every single fight. Every single fight. I used Thievery when I got it. 2,000 to 3,000 damage. I can do that with my physical attack. I hate this fucking game because I couldn't steal anything. Zidane as a thief is terrible because the stealing mechanics in Final Fantasy sucks, and this is the game that makes me hate Final Fantasy stealing mechanics. Other games, like if you want a thief, great. If you want mechanics of like they run fast or their evasion is great or they avoid pitfalls, like make thieves, dungeon delver kind of dudes. As soon as you have stealing as a shitty mechanic with no stealing success, except when you have items that maybe you'll be a bit more, you failed. You're not supposed to take a damage dealer and turn him into a thief because you're wasting turns trying to be a thief. Fuck thieves in Final Fantasy. They suck. And this is the game that taught me that. Anyway, so Zidane's a damage dealer. Let's go with that. Garnet. Let's turn Garnet and Eiko into both here. So Garnet and Eiko do summoning. I liken it to Garnet does a lot of damage. Eiko does a lot of support. They have the same skill sets. Otherwise, they're white mages. So they do white mage things. Cool thing about white mages is they are very powerful in this game. And they have a lot of abilities that support it. You can boost your summoning damage. You can boost your magic power. You can, auto regen or regen MP or shit like this. Or you can heal with your normal attacks and shit. But basically, Garnet has the regular assortment of Shiva, Ifrit, Rama, Titan. Not Titan, that's sort of... I keep thinking Titan's in this game, he's not. But Bahamut, Leviathan, the damage-dealing ones that do damage. Eiko has a bit weirder ones. He gets Carbuncle, who can cast Reflect, Fenrir, who can do damage. You got Medine, who does damage. Phoenix, who can revive people and do damage. But what's cool about Eiko's ones is if you have different, if you have different stones and you equip to it, you can actually change what certain ones do. I think Carbuncle, for example, instead of doing Reflect, can cast Haste instead, which is a much better tactic. And I'll get to that in a minute. So Eiko can kind of do support. She can do damage with summons, but really it feels like either way you go, like Garnet or Eiko can suffice as a white mage. And even if you do both, like you can have party setups where you have two white mages and it works just fine because they do different things. They don't really step on each other's toes. Vivi is a black mage. He does black mage things. It is great. Steiner does damage. he does damaging things. He can do like support attacks or break attacks, breaking physical defense or magic defense. I don't really use it. I use him to stab, and he gets late game skills because Beatrix is not in the party. Basically, anything Beatrix used on you in her battles to end battles, Steiner can use at the end of the game. Which is fine, I guess, if you're not going to have me use Beatrix, you fucking meanies, but whatever. Steiner can do cool damage, and his trance ability is doing more damage. I got to get into trance now because I brought it up. Trance sucks. It's a limit break that only works at the time you use it. If you try to save it, it goes away. Whoever decided that the limit breaks can't be saved is a meanie. I get why you want to save the limit breaks for bosses. It can cheese some bosses here and there, but not really. I mean, only in like Final Fantasy X can you kind of cheese bosses with trances and overdrives, right? I'd say quickenings as well in Final Fantasy XII, but in most other games, I don't think limit breaks are as game breaking. I would say 8, 10, and 12 are where they're game breaking. Every other game is they're good, but they don't like take fucking chunks out of the enemy's HP. There are ways for the bosses to still be threatening. So the fact that you can't start the battle with trance, you have to be hit into trance with the gauge there. You can only use like maybe 1 to 3 attacks and then you're done. Sometimes the trance doesn't even affect because you don't really need the ability that you're getting. Or sometimes you get the trance and you don't even get to use the abilities at all. It's weird. Zidane gets these things called Dyne, which is basically just, I do more damage. Steiner just does more damage. His stats go fucking through the roof. He does more damage and defends. Garnet's thing is, her summons are kind of cool in that you have a short animation and a longer animation. If you get the shorter animation, you do a damage. If you get a higher end animation, you get way more damage. So if she gets her Eidolon skill, there's a higher probability that she gets the full animation and does more damage. Speaking of summon animations, Odin's short animation is the best because all he does is just, he's not even on camera, he just chucks his fucking sword and then everything fucking dies. If you haven't seen Odin's animation, it's great. The counterbalance to that is Arc. If you see it once, you'll never want to see it again because it is so ridiculous and kind of underwhelming damage-wise that it's just there to be kind of a spectacle. Eden and Knights of the Round don't even come close. Like, Arc is just insane. I think I counted it. It is the longest summon animation I've ever seen, and they've never done anything like that since. There's a reason. But that's why they give you short animations. But yeah, check out the Arc animation and the Odin animations. They're great. But they're fucking weird. But yeah, so Garnet gets her thing. Eiko can use she can double cast white magic. So that's kind of neat. Vivi can do a double animation or a double black attack. So he gets what Eiko gets, but for his black magic. And everybody kind of gets their own kind of version of what their trance look is. Zidane gets to look like a genome and do more damage. Garnet basically doesn't really look any different. She just glows. Eiko gets to kind of like float in the air a bit with her like ornamental wings kind of float. Vivi gets his steeple hat. Instead of going to the bottom, it kind of crowns upwards. Steiner gets like a full fucking set of plate armor. It's a cool look. And let's see. Quina gets Quina's skill set is weird. So we'll start with the normal skill set first. Quina gets the Eat skill. And they learn blue magic by eating enemies at 1/8 health, I think. It's either 1/4 or 1/8. And then if you use Cook, they get they get Trance, they get a full chef's outfit. And they can get like 1/4 or 1/2. So they basically like double the effectiveness of their command. but they still have to be weak enough that they actually work. It's not like an auto eat, which would have been really nice. But you gain a different set of blue magic abilities. Mighty Guard, Limit, like Limit Break or Matro Magic or whatever. There's this weird one where you use Matro Magic to take yourself to 1 HP, and then you can use Limit Glove to do like 9999 damage if you're at 1 HP. It's kind of neat. It's risky, but it's kind of neat. You can do stuff like give everybody remedies at once. You can turn everybody to sleep. And I mean everybody in party and on the enemy side. It's weird. Just a full complement of blue magic. Level 5 Death, which is great for grinding, because you can, cast it on these like giant dragon things in disc 3. Cool shit like that. So Quina can be useful in a pinch as a healer and as kind of a unique fighting one, because the forks that they use kind of do random damage. It is risky to do physical damage with Quina, but it can work. But the blue magic is what saves them. Freya is a bit more straightforward in that Freya does damage, but her skill set as a Dragoon is also like, I can like heal the party with regen. I can do some cool attacks here and there, but they jump. Like she jumps and then comes down with a spear. You've seen one Dragoon, you've seen them all. They do the jump and they do the spear. In Trance, they jump and they stay in the air and they just chuck spears at the entire enemy party. It's fantastic. So Freya is cool to use sometimes, and she's also a good damage dealer. She has a skill later in the game where you can kind of do a lot of damage to dragons. You buff up the attack and get it to like 9999. Same thing with Quina, where it's called Frog Song, where if you get and eat more frogs as part of a mini game, it improves the attack power of that to get to 999. There are better attacks to get that than Thievery. So in a pinch, they can get to 9999 damage, quad 9s, with a lot more ease of use. Amaranth, monk stuff, either do damage, cause curses, cause status effects, do damage. He's an okay damage dealer. He can, throw coins or throw attacks. His best stuff is throwing like wing edges and pinwheels and shit, like Shadow does, or the ninja in Final Fantasy 5, how Edge throws stuff in Final Fantasy 4. You get that mechanic. His trance is being able to throw attacks, or it's either using the throw command. I think it's also using his skills. I think it is his skills that can help the entire party or hurt the enemy party instead of just single target. I believe that's the mechanic. But everybody kind of fits their own niche. What you get is what you get. And the cool thing is you can kind of experiment with them. This isn't like Final Fantasy 6 through 8 where everybody kind of feels like a limit break in a physical form. And that's the basic extent of their differences. Everybody in this game feels unique. Even if you have 2 white mages, they have a different skill set of summons, so they are unique in their skill set. Something else that can change the flow of battle is abilities, where the way you level up abilities is every piece of equipment has a certain thing that a person can equip with these stones. You get a certain amount of stones as you level up, and you can put certain slots into whatever. You can improve max HP, you can improve MP, you can level up, you can do more damage to certain enemy types. Everybody has this kind of unique skill set. So Zidane can protect girls, because of course he does. He wants to do that so he can use cover. Steiner and Freya can cover every party member, making protect girls kind of useless. Whatever. Or you can, double the rate at which you gain experience or, ability points. You can get rid of almost every status effect, which is great for certain boss fights, i.e. the final boss. You can change you can change the attack power of summons. You can have the MP cost. You can do like return magic. You can, counter attack, which can be nasty. One of my favorite setups actually is midway or early into disc 3, you start getting auto haste and auto regen. You could double up on those, and you may never need to heal ever again because the game goes very fast. And auto haste and auto regen is great because the one thing that I do not like about this game, Chrono Cross Legend of Dragoon, is it is slow. Even by like turn-based battle standards, this game is fucking slow. This game has the worst reputation of it because the intro part of the battles always, in the original version, always has this 10 or 15 second opening thing before the battle even starts. And then the animations are slow. The dying animations for characters are slow. And it's weird because like every time a character dies, it feels like they're just falling asleep. Like you look at Steiner, he just kind of like he just kind of rests. It's not like he dies in this pit of anger. He just falls onto the ground like limp. So the animations are slow, and like even when you get the ATB gauge up to full, like you're kind of just like there's this like weird delay and hitch between animations. The spells are slow. The summons, if you put them on slow, they're fucking slow. Everything in this game is just slow, and it doesn't help. In the remaster for the PS4 version or the PC versions, they have it to where you can get rid of the animations in the opening. Changes everything. Like the game just, here's your battle, boom. What a godsend. It doesn't change anything about trances sucking or Zidane stealing mechanics sucking. All that stuff is still there, but at least getting rid of the like early game animations can save you so much time in game. It's really nice. So there is issues with the battle system that I wish, like if they do remake it, in a HD 2D form, they have some work to do. There's a lot of things about the game that does need fixing. Not really from the character end, more so from fixed trans so that you can either save it or choose to use trans. I think maybe choosing when to use trans would be nice. More so than like it just happens, because that's what you do in other limit breaks. You can choose when to use it. Maybe something where if you don't use it within a couple of battles, it goes away. Like maybe then it would make more sense. You can save it, but you can only save it for a couple of battles. Even that might help. Because then if it's like a hard random encounter, like I can understand justifying it, but sticking it right as you have to use it and you're fucked, or, just little things. There are good things about the battle system, but it's, the abilities are cool because you can kind of stick the cool combinations together. You can do the regen and, that, or you can, have everybody float, or you can do things. The idea with it is you have to level up a thing until it masters, and then you can keep the skill as you equip other things. So you need to keep at least one of every piece of equipment because you never know which character needs what ability unless it's blacked out. Another reason that you want to keep all your stuff is the synthesis shop. A good way to get better equipment throughout the game is to just synthesize stuff. So you can buy stuff at a shop, but you can also synthesize it and do it that way. So synthesizing your equipment gets better equipment, so you never know what you're going to need if it's an early game thing or a late game thing that helps you get the new shit that you need. Weapons, armor, mostly accessories, but that gets you stuff to synthesize. So not just the shops to get weapons and armor, but a synthesis shop to get better stuff. It's a really good mechanic. I wish synthesis was a higher priority in other games, but this is kind of the one that I remember them using. They've done customization. They don't usually do synthesis shops, so that has a unique feature to it. A lot of side quests in Final Fantasy IX are neat because this is still before the Final Fantasy X. These side quests suck, and they're done. Chocobo Hot and Cold in particular is my favorite. And some people may like it, some people may not. I like the idea because it gives you like a mini game. You take a chocobo and you dig and you dig and you dig. I think it's bad if you have like carpal tunnel or some sort of physical problem with your fingers, because you're constantly, mashing buttons. But you go around the arena and you try to dig up, and they have pressure points all around the fucking thing. And Choco will tell you whether you're close or bad by giving you better signals. And it's frustrating, but it's kind of cathartic when you finally do get it, because it does take some time to gather everything you need, because you're looking for these stones called chocographs. You get the chocographs, there's like 25 of them, give or take, and you can go around the world and then kind of treasure hunt. So you go out in the world and you treasure hunt, and you get some good items, or you get extra items that you need, and you're kind of like, I might need this, I might not need this, it's kind of cool. But you can go around and get better chocobos. So you get the ones that are just riding around in the world, you get a blue one that can go on the river, you get the red ones that kind of climb mountains and shit, which can get this thing called a dead pepper, which can kind of unseal cracks in the wall. They can go underneath the ocean, and you can climb other places. So you can climb mountains. Darker blue, you can go into the seas, and then you can ride the sky. And the riding the sky doesn't get you too much, but it's still like an airship will be faster, but a chocobo riding in the sky will get you to the super fucking boss. And let's just say the super fucking boss is a pain in the ass. All you gotta do is look up Ozma, and it's a fucking horror story. Let's just say I beat him once, never doing it again. He's a floating ball of bitch. Let's just say that. He's a floating ball of doom, and he's a fucking asshole. He's a random attacking asshole with high-end attack power, can basically counter everything, and you never know when he's gonna just throw a fucking meteor at you and just kill you. Because he can. Or a curse, which can do like 3,000 damage and cause a lot of side effects. But if you beat him, then you beat him. And does it get you anything? No. Just the allure of having done it. But yeah, he's like one of the worst super bosses in the game. Not from the, I have too much fucking HP. It's the, I'm gonna just fucking murder you. And there ain't nothing you could do strategy-wise to stop me. You can try, but he's random. He's a fucking ball of doom, and I hate him. But anyway, that's what you do with your chocobos. So you get the side quest of the chocobo hot and cold. That's your main side quest. Another kind of smaller scale one, which is a little bit neat, is Mognet. So Moogles take a bit of, they're still not center stage or anything, but they get a little bit more, cool factor to them, because they get like they got their own culture. They got their own, like, these are male, these are female. They have, some of them are dating, or they're actually, having, they're actually married or have kids. Some of them have, lovelorn, or they're friends with other ones, or they have an admiration for the traveling Moogle known as Stiltskin, who gets you items. So you can send letters. So you can send letters and then read letters from everybody. So like a character in the game will even send you letters about her progress as an actress every once in a while, as a friend from Tantalus. But then most of the Mognet is, I have stuff I want to talk about, and everybody has a different reaction. Some of them are a little snooty, some of them are a little nice, some of them like certain ones but hate other. You learn about the different Moogles, and then you get this cool side quest of send this letter to this person to learn why Mognet is fucking up. We're all panicked because Mognet is fucking up. Why did it fuck up? Why is this going on? So you're helping them out, and you don't really get a huge treasure for finishing the side quest, but it's a nice little thing. It doesn't take a lot of time to just read each letter, and it gives you some much needed downtime. What doesn't, and which sucks, is Tetramaster. For all the good that Triple Triad gives you, Tetramaster takes it away. The idea is you have a physical attack, you have a magic attack, you have an attack, you have an attack stat, then you have a magical or physical, and then you have physical or magical defense. And you have these little arrows that correspond to when you get attacked. If an arrow is going to a spot that isn't guarded by another arrow, you just take it immediately, or you do a battle. And you're supposed to have a number from like 1 to 225, like 255 or something, to coordinate to the strength of your thing. But it doesn't fucking matter. The game will just arbitrarily decide whether you win or you lose. I don't think there's any strategy. I think it's pure RNG. The last I'd heard, Tetramaster is just pure RNG, whether you win or lose. And anything connected to it gets taken. So you can win or lose at a whim. And I just hate Tetramaster. What I hate most is it's mandatory. There's a spot in Disc 3 where you have to win 3 card battles in a row to win. Fuck you. I don't want to do that. It's dumb. So the less said about Tetramaster, the better. So, last thing I want to talk about is Nobuo Uematsu's one of his best soundtracks. This was at a time... I'm just checking time here. I have been going a while. I kind of figured it would be. Been talking about a lot of things, and I'm not going to say Final Fantasy IX is the best soundtrack, but when I was looking back on how much good music was here, I was kind of floored by how many different songs I came up with that I just remember and love. And this was at a time when Uematsu was... like, this was his last main one for the Final Fantasy franchise. Unless he was called back for some project or something. Like, this was his main work as the main composer. Because after that, other people did the main composing job, and then he came in for like 3 or 4 songs and then called it a day. And I'm waiting for an ambulance to go by, so give me just a sec. There we go. I hate ambulances. Especially at like 4 o'clock in the morning. Because I woke up early and I'm recording this. Whatever. Fuck it. So yeah, this was like Uematsu's final like main composition job for Final Fantasy as a franchise before he went off and did his own thing and other things. But he brought his A game here. And he went very orchestral. Had a lot of techno-y stuff for some interesting spots here and there, very heavy stuff for certain things, but went really good. And a lot of this stuff is very unique. And I still think sound-wise, Final Fantasy VIII is probably his best work. But I would say this across the board was probably better composition-wise. Because I think like Final Fantasy VI is the best work from the SNES era, and even like from the early games. Like, I like Final Fantasy VII, but the MIDI sequencing doesn't really do the songs a lot of justice. The only thing it really does is make it uniquely Final Fantasy VII. Like, no other game has that kind of sound chip or sound font. Final Fantasy VIII was very orchestral and soldier and military oriented for a reason because of the backdrops. But there's still some techno-y stuff in there, like Man in the Machine Gun. This is kind of like way more subdued orchestral stuff, but there's also that unique sense that he just has a whole like unique just feel to his music. There's no like one defining style, and he's able to just do a bunch of cool stuff and do it differently. The opening theme is the place I'll return to someday. This very mysterious but soft song. The backdrops, especially in the first disc, of seeing like a lot of the main like where you're going. You're going to see Lindblom and Alexandria. You can see these like crazy, you'd call them drone shots now, but these like sequences of these shots. I wish panoramic view, something like that. The best way I would describe it, seeing like all the places you're going to go with this song as its backdrop is great. A lot of people like Over the Hills or the overworld theme, and the overworld themes always do matter. I'm not really into this one like everybody else. I still think like Final Fantasy 6 and 7 are probably my favorites. You know, I do have a fondness for 4, and you know, I'm trying to think. Final Fantasy 3 is good. Final Fantasy 4 is great. Final Fantasy 5 is good and unique because there's 3 of them, but only like the third one is the best one. The third world, the merged world, is good. Final Fantasy 6 has Terra's theme and Searching for Friends. That's probably my favorite. Final Fantasy 7 is just so good. I don't know if I like 8 and 9s as much. And there's another ambulance, but at least it's further away. Is it coming near me? It's coming near me. God damn it. And it stops. 2 times in 5 minutes. Great. But people do like Overworld because it's kind of that Melodies of Life. Melodies of Life is kind of the final theme. It's a very nice track at the end of the game. Very soft song about, you know, the existentialism and finding good in life and, you know, being friends and all this stuff that we've seen in our lives. And, you know, hearing that as a leitmotif throughout the game in this overworld form is kind of nice. I'm not as, like, overwhelmed by it, but I get why people wouldn't like it. The one I liked most, which is a subtle one, is going to be Frontier Village Dolly. One of the early themes for a city, but it's just this subdued, like very happy village, rustic village, nothing happening until the story hits, but you're just like, it's just a mountain town. It's very nice. The song is just quiet and happy. You just got through this fucking cave, and you know, you get a break, get a nice village, rustic village to be a part of. The Festival of the Hunt, the Hunter's Chance. Oh, it's such a good, like, pulse-pounding song. It's pretty intense. I really enjoy that one. This one is cool because it's called the Eternal Harvest. Into Disc 2, you talk with Freya about the clay resettlement and try to protect it. So they do a river dance. They legit do a freaking tap dance river dance thing, and the song that accompanies it is so good. It's only like a minute long, but it's just really just unique kind of like European or Scottish, Irish kind of folksy tune that's a dance theme. It feels like Riverdance. I don't know if that's what he was going for, but that's what he got, and I'm like, every fucking time it's great. This one shows up whenever you do the Chocobo Hot and Cold, and also a sequence in the beginning of the game while you're doing the mini game with Blank, the Crossing Swords, the Vamo Aya Flamenco. Oh, God. I bet this is the reason I like playing Hot and Cold so much. The game itself, kind of annoying, but this song plays every single fucking time you do it. It is great. It is just a cool Spanish tune, and the way the guitars work, the ambiance of the instruments, it guides you. It makes you want to play this fucking game, and I think that's why I like Chocobo Hot and Cold so much, is just the instrumentation. It's so good. This one's a late game one. This is Roses of May and Protecting My Devotion. This is Beatrix's set themes. So she gets a very softer set piece for when she's introspective. In late or early disc 3, her and Steiner have kind of fallen for each other, weird mechanics, weird shenanigans, which is kind of funny bits. Oh yeah, the ATE system. While I'm talking about that, this isn't part of it, but there are things you can do that spur this on. The game allows you to do ATEs where you can see sequences that are happening at the same time as you're supposedly doing. So you're basically cutting to it's it's Family Guy cutaways in Final Fantasy. That's essentially what this is. You're stopping your thing and doing something else, and you're learning about other things that are happening. One of them is to do this like letter. Like Eiko's gonna write Zidane a letter in disc 3, but it turns out that through shenanigans, Steiner picks it up, Beatrix picks it up, and they find out that they think they're falling for each other, and everybody's just like looking at them like, dude, this is fucking amazing. They're gonna make out or something. They're gonna, confess or something. And it's just goofy as shit. And it is a mandatory sequence, but it's like kind of cool. The reason I bring this up now is because Beatrix and Steiner together are trying to save Alexandria at the time. And the song that plays while that's going on is like a cool, like determined theme. These two people just fighting for their lives, trying to save their city. And it's just great feel. The Chocobo themes, while not my favorite, they're cool because the Aloha and Ukulele de Chocobo, they fit the kind of very low-key, subdued, softer vibe the game is going for. And I do enjoy that. Black Mage Village, another favorite for people who like kind of the man with a machine gun, like kind of banger kind of feel, but in a more, I would call it a dancey jig. It's a very techno-y theme still, but it's got cool instrumentation and some like animal sound effects here and there, almost like you're listening to like Donkey Kong Country in a way. This is the best way I would describe it. Black Mage Village is just kind of cool. Mount Gulag makes a return. Legit. It's Mount Gulag from disc 1, or like from Final Fantasy 1. Characters from Final Fantasy 1, the 4 fiends, return. And this is one of the dungeons you can go to. They reuse Mount Gold or Mount Gulag, and they do it in a cool techno-y way. Airship Hildegard is the overworld theme for the airship, and this one is pretty good. I like it more than the Ragnarok. I would say it is very similar to Final Fantasy VIII's song quite a bit, actually. I like the opening bits to Hildegard more, though. I think it's just very impactful, impassioned. You're taking to the sky and you're lifting off. But yeah, the more I listen to it, I mean, take a shot at listening at Final Fantasy VIII's Ride On and Airship Hildegard, and you'll just listen and you think, God, they feel so similar. I don't think that was intentional, but it ended up happening. This is another one like the Village of Dali, which is kind of cool. It's funny that like my favorite villages to visit in this game are the two that don't even really matter much. You have the Village of Dali and Daguerrero, the Hermit's Library. And if you've been to Daguerrero, you have to be there with the airship or the Chocobo. And I actually forget if you can get there via Chocobo. I think you can, though. But when you get there, you get this place that is just... I want to say it's a harpsichord or a piano. Just it's a 1 or 2 track piano theme that is just very stately, very very dignified, but also very happy sounding. You love being here. You just feel like you're gonna learn something being in this environment. It feels like a museum. But a library or museum, a very cordial environment. It's cool because it's a non-essential area. You never have to go here. But because the song just feels right, it's someplace you just want to visit because you just want to stay there. It's a unique aesthetic. It's all made in water, and all these books are surrounding it. It's just cool. It's a cool environment. This one is probably going to be the one anybody has recognized ever. You're Not Alone. Disc 3, when all the Garland shenanigans and Zidane shenanigans happen, Zidane has a crisis of conscience and turns into a fucking zombie kind of guy. And he goes to this like song while he's fighting a bunch of dudes, and it's just cool, determined, like 2 or 3 minutes of this guitar solo overstretching the other parts of the song, you know. And if you've heard it once, you've heard it a million times. Like, as soon as you know that guitar tone hits, you're just like, it's so fucking good. You know, You're Not Alone is probably the song anybody knows from Final Fantasy IX if they've heard any song. Assault on the Silver Dragons from the beginning of Disc 4 is also pretty good. Only happens during cutscene, but it's pretty nice. Memoria is the final dungeon. It's another very mysterious, disturbing kind of theme. And I like it because it's not trying to, like, it's not even in the determined, because I use that word determined in a lot of these songs, because determination and the quest and the journey and the destination and the whatever, that's important. This is more just introspective and just lets you think. And you're just kind of confused and mysterious because all of these little images of your early life or your past life are coming back to kind of haunt you. And Garland is there messing with you and giving you these like little tidbits of information as you're going along fighting the four fiends again and trying to make your way through this dungeon. And it's not even that long of a dungeon. It's just every screen is different. And while you're going along there, you get this just building mysteriousness to it. I still think the castle is a better theme for this sort of like darker thing, but that was a more gothic, Castlevania-esque kind of thing in Final Fantasy VIII that we're going for. This is just fantastical, unique, dark, and Memoria is one of those dungeons, one of those final dungeons that I will remember. The final fight with Kuja and the final fight with Necron for different reasons. The Dark Messenger, really good. If you remember the fights with Seymour or the Extreme, or specifically, I would say the Maybe I'm a Lion fight with Ultimecia, the third form of Ultimecia, that's what the kind of the Dark Messenger song sounds like. It is a song I wish had more covers to it in a metal song, because it's like the closest that Uematsu gets to a metal song other than like the Final Fantasy VII boss theme or Otherworld, until Otherworld happened and just blew the fuck away. Because it's like whenever he gets to do metal sounding tracks, it's fucking awesome, because you can tell he has that like 70s, 80s, hard rock and heavy metal backing in his arsenal as a keyboard player, and it's just like he knows what the fuck he's doing. It's just great. The final battle is very Final Fantasy final battle-ish. You kind of know the style, The more I listen to like Final Fantasy Theater Rhythm, the more I start recognizing the motifs when he does get them. But even then, his style is just so different. Like no song sounds like them, unless you get something too similar that it's not a coincidence. But man, there's like 20 songs that could have nailed right there. 10, 15 songs, 20 songs. Just from this, I'm sitting there just floored by the variety that was on display. Because there was metal stuff, there was determined stuff, there was mysterious stuff, there was subdued, happy-go-lucky stuff, there was just questing, journey, like all cool stuff. And it's so unique as a soundtrack that feels like him in a nutshell, because I can't pick out a style that is his. I can pick out little things I've heard from other songs, but I can't pick out anything that is just a thing he does, It's such a cool thing. But that's a good way to end on as far as a main thing. But to kind of wrap things up and circle back, there are a lot of positives and negatives in the game. And I do want to kind of refresh the memories on these, because this is one I had to find a lot of negatives for to balance out the positives that I felt. I talked about the battle and animations being very fucking slow. I hope that it gets fixed someday. when the fact is that you have to turn the battle speed all the way up and still use auto haste to really get a faster battle system, you've done it wrong. Zidon's flirting is really dumb, and I hate it, and I've said it, I don't like it. Couldn't steal anything. Stealing sucks in Final Fantasy, it just does. Beatrix isn't playable. I hate you, game. Beatrix should have been playable after Disc 2. The fact that she isn't is a fucking crime, and I hope if you remake it, you make her playable. You know? See, Disc 3 and Necron are fucking goofy. I didn't understand it. If you understood the Terra stuff, great. I never did. Garnets can't concentrate is a cool thing plot-wise, but it interferes too much in the battles. They went too far with it. They went too far, and it just never got me. Eiko annoys the fuck out of me, much like Zidane does early. Eiko's early bullshit fucking annoying. Freya, important character Disc 1 and Disc 2. After that point, nah. Bit disappointing. Quina and Amaranth don't do anything story-wise. They're not there for any reason. Trance sucks. Tetramaster sucks. You know, there's a lot of stuff that sucks in the game. But what is great? Vivi is one of the best characters in the franchise. Garnet and Steiner are also very good. Beatrix is a good character. Zidane, when he's not being a fucking flirtatious dumbass, is actually a pretty engaging, main character. I think Kuja is one of the best Final Fantasy villains there is, and I don't know if he gets the credit he deserves. For all his floweriness, he fucking murders shit. He destroys a bunch of shit. He's the cause and manipulation of a lot of shit, but he actually does all of this himself. He sends flunkies, but when push comes to shove, he's there mocking you and murdering the shit out of you. So he's able to pull it off. And then when, shit hits the fan at the end of Disc 3, he's the one causing the damage. So it's like, yeah, he's effective. The game is darker than it looks. Plot-wise, all the Vivi stuff, all the Kuja stuff, all the Garnet stuff. Oh, it's so... I think you need a playthrough, and maybe you get it right away. I didn't at first. It took me a second or third playthrough to really get the Kuja stuff, the Vivi stuff, the Garnet stuff, what they were going for. The older I get, the more I resonate with characters. And even if a couple of characters don't really matter, a lot of the characters in this game matter. And it matters that they are experiencing a lot of this loss and grief. A really good exploration of the old school class-based system. From Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy 4, everybody felt unique. They weren't just, hey, you can do a little bit of everything, it's cool. No, they actually felt like the characters, they were an extension of the characters. In battle, they felt like the person that you're actually controlling. They are locked in, and they are the way they're going to be. I kind of like that system. Because you can break the Final Fantasy 7s, the Final Fantasy 8s, even the Final Fantasy 6s to an extent. But you have to kind of live within the confines of a class-based system and work with those. And unless you play them a lot, you're not allowed to kind of fuck around too much until you find those combinations. I found them in the abilities, much less the characters and their skills. So I like being able to be kind of locked and restricted to knowing that when I'm using Garnet, I'm using her to heal, or I'm using her to use a summon. I'm not using her to do other random shit. I'm never using her as an attacker. Unless it's to kill something that's already fucking dead, Chocobo Hot and Cold, mostly because Vama Aya Flamenco is there. But I love the ability of going on a treasure hunt. It's not a mandatory thing, it's just there. I love doing it, even if it can fuck up my hands the older I get. The soundtrack, I spent like 20 minutes talking about the soundtrack, I think. I love it. And Mognet is a cool idea. I think they could flesh it out. They could have fleshed it out to be something more expansive. But for what it was, I liked learning about the Mughals and doing fun stuff and helping them out, and also just learning about the world that they inhabit. So it was a cool idea. So there are things in Final Fantasy IX that they never try again, but they could have tried more, like ATEs and, the Mognet stuff would have been great. But overall, like, Final Fantasy IX is one of those, like, you kind of have to sit on it. If it doesn't grab you right away, I think you will enjoy it the more times you play it. Some people grabbed it right away. They were like, oh, I can really get to this. This is great. But I think it's the ones where you can kind of, it gets better the more you kind of dig your heels in and learn without getting sucked into some of the bad. Like, there is bad stuff. The plot can go all over the place, but the characters make it matter, and I think there are likable characters to an extent, and there's some that really, really hold the game together, like Vivi. It's one of those things that it was meant to be a love letter to older Final Fantasy games, and it is probably the best one of those middle three. The 7s, the 8s, the 9s, because again, we're getting very, very late. It's been 25 years. It doesn't feel like it. This game still holds up. I would say, in terms of modern eyes, I'd say 10 is going to be the one people would gravitate to. And yeah, I like 10 the best, but 9 is my third favorite behind Final Fantasy 6. And even then, it has things that 6 didn't have because of the way it was designed. I think its focus on characters is such a good thing. And the overall package, while a little jank, is still really well done. And I do think that if they do remake it, which it sounds like they're gonna, it sounds like the most open secret in the world, it's a game that deserves it. I think it didn't get the credit it deserved at the time, but it's the one other than 7 that I think people are like, oh shit, play it. Like 7 and 10 and 6, I think, are the ones that everybody like, play them. Just fucking play them. Of those middles, the 4 through 10s, like, you could play any of them for any reason and probably like them. I think 9 is the one that everybody's just like, nah, not gonna have any trouble playing this one. It's fucking good. Just do it. I don't think it reaches the heights of the best ones, but it has the most, like, easy breezy. You're gonna enjoy it. I think it's pleasant. I think it's enjoyable across the board. I think everybody is usually just like, yeah, you're gonna love it. And I think that's the sort of reputation that's preceded it now, is because it was so underrated at the time, but it's the one that kind of held on to its reputation and didn't really, like, lose itself in the march of time, other than a couple of the foibles of the battle system, and it's the easiest one to kind of go back to and not feel But would I recommend Final Fantasy IX? Absolutely. Now, if they do remake it and they make it better, whether they go full Final Fantasy VII remake or the HD 2D version, I'd say the HD 2D would be the easiest method to do it. Just touch up the visuals and make the battles flow a lot better. And, I think a lot of the stuff would go away and it would end up being a much breezier experience. But Final Fantasy is really fucking good. Final Fantasy IX is really fucking good and really deserves attention, and I'm glad that the further along you get, the more it proceeds. And I'm happy to have talked about it at length. Like, my God, it's almost been 2 hours. I talked a lot about it, and I don't regret a single bit of it. But my voice is killing me, so let me get to the stuff here. So it'll be my usual anime discussion stuff, and the next month will be Mega Man 4 and Mega Man X4 this year, Castlevania the anime seasons 1 through 4, and then Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds in late June. So I hope you guys enjoyed me sticking around talking this game at length, because I certainly enjoyed it, despite a lot of talking. I enjoyed it a lot. But hey, I'll see you next time. Citizen Strife, signing off.